Welcome to the second MGTOW minstrel video, What is MGTOW? Before I dive into that, I want you to consider a fact. Keep it at the back of your mind. During the First World War, 1914 to 18, suffragettes used to hand out white feathers to young men who had not enlisted, publicly shaming them, humiliating them on buses and in public places. They were implying that the young men were cowards for not enlisting, and receiving a white feather hit a lot of these young men pretty hard. Some fell into depression, others had nervous breakdowns, some even committed suicide. Some were shamed into enlisting, they went off to war and never came back. It was all the more disgusting because it was done by suffragettes who still wanted young males exclusively to bleed and die for their country, while they stayed at home drinking tea and moaning because they didn't have the vote. Oh, such oppression. After the war, a planned parade of the wounded was cancelled by the Home Office because the sight of all the maimed young men would upset the women. Disgusting? Yeah. But it does demonstrate that women even back then only wanted equality when it suited them. So bear that in mind as we delve into MGTOW. Last time, in my previous video, I examined definitions given for feminism and how such definitions can be dishonest and misleading and used to shut up opponents by misrepresenting what's really going on. The same can be said about definitions of MGTOW. Different definitions are put forward corresponding to the attitudes of the people doing the defining. So let's look at three definitions: the accurate one posted on one of the biggest MGTOW sites, a slightly disparaging one posted on Wikipedia, and a quite disgraceful one found on Urban Dictionary's website. So here is the best, most accurate definition. MGTOW, men going their own way, is a statement of self-ownership where the modern man preserves and protects his own sovereignty above all else. It's the manifestation of one word: no. Rejecting silly preconceptions and cultural definitions of what a man is, looking to no one else for social cues, refusing to bow, serve and kneel for the opportunity to be treated like a disposable utility, and living according to his own interests, his own best interests, in a world which would rather he didn't. I love it. In essence, it's having the common sense to be a douche instead of allowing women and society in general to take you for a fool. Interestingly, did you notice the official definition doesn't even mention women at all? But I can tell you what the basic thinking is where they're concerned. It's hidden in plain sight within that definition. It's as though millions of men en masse look at society, Western civilization, and then they take a long, hard look at what women have become, and they say this to them: you know what, honey, you've won. I surrender. Congratulations to the victor, the spoils. I hope you're happy. Okay? You can have your filthy feminism. You can be what you like. You can have what you like. You can do what you like. But you can do it on your own. Sure, you can be bolshy, assertive, feisty, spunky, a career woman who describes herself as a challenge on dating sites. You can be a strong, independent woman with attitude. You can have your fancy pants career. You can run a business, be on some board of directors. In short, you can be a modern, liberated woman. And if that's what you want to be, go ahead. I'm not stopping you. Best of luck. But if that is what you choose to be and do in life, I don't want you. I don't want you. Okay? I've seen what women have become and the sort of world that you've created. I've seen what you've done and are doing to boys and men, and your world is bleak and ugly. You've reinvented yourself and made a pig's ear of it. I want nothing to do with you. I don't want to have children with you. I don't want to marry you. I don't want to cohabit with you. I don't want to date you. I don't want to socialise with you. I don't want you to be a part of my world. The less contact I have with you, the happier my life will be and the less damage you can do. I'll mix with you at work if I have to, but I'll take measures to ensure I'm never alone with you because of the toxic environment that you've created. If you have curves in all the right places, I might conceivably bed you, but then you'll be straight out of the door afterwards because you have nothing else to offer me. I'll probably be relieved to see you go because men are at constant risk of false rape accusations anyway. Now, if what I've just described to you sounds a bit extreme, it's because it is. There are many levels of MGTOW, and this is the most hardline version. In practice, you'll find MGTOWs who are happy to have women in their social circle and even have relationships with women. But in their case, it works like this. The less woke, the less feminist a woman is, the more she presents herself as traditionally feminine, the more likely a MGTOW is to accept her into his social circle, at least in some superficial fashion. But the cardinal rule where all MGTOWs are concerned is that they will never, under any circumstances, cohabit or live with any woman, no matter how nice she is or appears to be. They may have the loveliest girlfriend in the world, but MGTOW men are still going to be off the plantation and they're not coming back. It's often commented that MGTOW men seem to talk a lot about the women that they're supposed to be ignoring. But those who come out with this comment they're missing the point. Many MGTOWs shun women to varying degrees. It doesn't mean that they're blind to injustice, nor the need for them to warn their fellow man, especially the young, of the dangers that they face, helping them to avoid the misery they've experienced. Many, probably most MGTOWs have a very hardline attitude to equality, and it goes something like this. Okay, honey bun, so you've won the battle of the sexes. Well done. You must be so happy. However, there are some ground rules for us men in light of that, so listen up. Here is what our attitude is going to be from now on. You want equality? Go ahead, but it has to be equality. It has to be a brutal, unflinching, uncompromising, give no quarter, total equality. None of this lighter prison sentences for women nonsense that feminists have been fighting for. Equal crime, equal time. Men currently are getting 60% longer sentences for the same crime. And it's an outrage, totally unjustifiable, and it's not equality. As for domestic or any violence, statistics have been emerging for some time now which show that this is not a gendered issue. You know what? Most of us agree with the old saying, never hit a lady. But when a woman hits a man, she's no lady and it doesn't apply to her. Hit a man, expects retaliation. Men were not put on this earth to be punch bags for violent, entitled women who think they've got some God-given right to go around hitting men with impunity. It's not rocket science. If you don't want men to hit you, don't hit men. You're equal now. Learn to keep your hands to yourself or be held to the same standards as men and take the consequences. Of course, it's a foregone conclusion that feminists will try to spin this as advocating violence against women, when really it's advocating for a level playing field of mutual restraint, in which ideally nobody hits anybody. But if you do, don't expect special treatment. If you don't think you can win a fight, don't introduce violence into the situation and then play the victim when you come off worse. No MGTOW is going to have the slightest sympathy for you if you're the one who struck the first blow. You're not special anymore. Chivalry is not only dead, but incomprehensible to a MGTOW. You open your own door, you put your own loo seat down, you queue like everyone else. You stand on the bus, seats are first come, first served. If a ship is sinking, it's still first come, first served, even for the lifeboats. And if you're unlucky and there's a shortage of seats and you get there too late, you perish as the ship goes down. Don't look to the men to lay down their lives for the likes of you. No gender quotas for the peachy jobs either. If you want equality of outcome, which is not a good idea, but if you want it, that should apply to sewage workers, miners, army personnel, as well as seats on the board of some fancy company. Women only want equality when it suits them. I've never seen a feminist complain there are too few women working in sewage farms. No, honey, you get equality across the board, and that's what we'll be pushing for. There should be no easing of entry criteria for things like firemen or lowering of army standards, although that has been happening, and it's appalling, because lowering standards in those cases means greater risk to life due to reduced efficiency. You should keep up or get thrown out, except of course during war, when you get called up and sent to the front line on an equal footing with the men. Absolute, total equality. Let's have a battle of the Somme for women. Your life is not more valuable than that of a man, so why not? Why should men have to work longer than women? No, you get the same retirement age. MGTOWs will increasingly demand these things, and why shouldn't they? You're not gracing hearth and home anymore, so you're not worth dying for. That's the bottom line. Nor is the bleak and ugly society that you've created. You can go bleed and die for it. Why should we? So when you hear MGTOWs talking about women, what they're really talking about is the hypocrisy and double standards, the equality cherry picking which goes on. They're only flagging stuff to their fellow men, especially younger ones. I'm not talking about you. Nothing will incense a MGTOW more than the idiotic notion that women somehow merit special treatment simply by virtue of their being women. Most importantly, don't kid yourself that this is misogyny. Outrage at injustice, double standards and hypocrisy is not misogyny. Neither is demanding that equality actually mean equality. In fact, MGTOWs see clearly that all the bias in the courts, in the culture, expecting men to be disposable commodities, all these things are actually born of misandry, a pig-arrogant notion on the part of women that they're somehow better creatures, more valuable than the men, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary being posted all over the internet. In times gone by, any unfortunate man who was treated badly may well have considered himself to be a rare soul who plucked a lemon where only peaches grew. Not anymore. Nowadays he can go online, compare notes and realise that his bad experience is far from rare and possibly even the norm. So there you have the corollary to refusing to bow, serve and kneel for the opportunity to be treated like a disposable utility and living according to our own best interests in a world which would rather we didn't. That's what it really means. You check your own oil, change your own tyres, carry your own shopping, put up your own shelves. We're done. And that's MGTOW. Men choosing their own path without your or anyone else's input. And usually that entails a wholesale rejection of relationships with the women of today, because frankly it's the common sense thing to do. In the light of all that I've said, let's see some of those hostile definitions, shall we? Here's a Wikipedia version, slightly disparaging. It's not too bad. Men going their own way, MGTOW, is an anti-feminist, misogynistic, mostly online community advocating for men to separate themselves from women and from a society which they believe has been destroyed by feminism. The community is a part of the manosphere, a collection of anti-feminist websites and online communities that also includes the men's rights movement, incels and pickup artists. Well, you can tell that whoever wrote that isn't a fan. They're sort of right in that we do believe feminism has been a social catastrophe and that society is inherently anti-male. But lumping us in with incels? Really? I've had 3 friends with benefits since my divorce in 2015, and I've had a great time with them. Many MGTOWs, unshackled from the financial demands of women, have done well for themselves and lead happy, fulfilled, affluent and varied lives. If they've anything to do with women, it's on their terms, not the women's. The stereotype is wrong, just plain and simple. And finally, here's Urban Dictionary's version, voted their top definition of MGTOW. Men going their own way. Males who don't want to grow up and play nice with women. So they act like Eric Cartman, whoever that is, when he says, "Screw you guys, I'm going home." MGTOW members dedicate themselves to a lifetime without romantic relationships with women, but full of masturbation, like priests and NAMBLA members. Now, I had to look up NAMBLA to see what it stood for. Wait for it. The North American Man-Boy Love Association is a paedophilia and pederasty advocacy organisation in the United States. It works to abolish age of consent laws criminalising adult sexual involvement with minors. See what they're doing there? Placing MGTOW down there with paedophiles. Pretty nasty stuff, but what did you expect? As MGTOW really begins to bite, and you ain't seen nothing yet, this kind of vicious attack on men going their own way will only increase, especially if the men are obviously happy. Women who delude themselves that they're the prize are going to be very miffed when they see how happy men can be without someone like them in tow. One Lem Man contextualises MGTOW like this. Dorcas Malorcas can't get laid because he doesn't believe in hygiene and he doesn't know how to speak to or treat a woman. So instead of improving himself, he's decided to blame feminism and is proclaiming he's part of MGTOW. So there you have it. If you are smelly and can't get laid, supposedly you become a MGTOW. When you contrast the last 2 definitions with definitions given by MGTOW men themselves, you can see the hostility against men going their own way in certain unsavoury quarters. But whichever definition you adopt, whatever your opinion is of MGTOW, there are 3 things you need to bear in mind. The first is that there are varying degrees to which MGTOWs adopt this philosophy. Some still have superficial relationships with women, while those at the other end of the spectrum literally try to go off-grid, shunning not just women but society as well, not wishing to make any contribution to it in any way because society hates men. Between these extremes, there are multiple levels, degrees in attitudes held by MGTOW men. There's no centralised hub. MGTOW is a philosophy. It doesn't have a head office. Some men think you cannot have a girlfriend and be MGTOW, but it's clear that you can, so long as it's on your terms and you don't make the mistake of letting them move in with you or get them pregnant. The second thing to consider is that the movement is growing exponentially. 10 years ago, most people hadn't even heard of it, but nowadays you frequently see it mentioned in magazine articles. It's already beginning to have an impact. There are many men who are MGTOW in practice who've never even heard of the term. It's a phenomenon, a sea change in men's attitudes to women and society in general. Don't underestimate the number of men leaning this way. Gillette reaped a write-down of $8 billion after their feminist advert. A boycott doesn't bite that hard if it's just a couple of 100,000 disgruntled men. That advert caused widespread, deep offence, and men reacted accordingly, and it burned Gillette. If just 10% of the men who would normally be expected to get married, not the usual percentage of confirmed bachelors in any generation, but an extra 10% of men, decide not to marry or shack up with anyone, the result will be a seismic shock to society. It will translate into millions or even tens of millions of women in America and hundreds of millions of women worldwide who can't find a husband / partner and who cannot find anyone willing to father children with them. This will be devastating on many levels, and mainly for the women. However, the MGTOW impact will go even deeper than that. MGTOWs regard society, the establishment, as being hostile to masculinity itself, regarding it as a pathology. Men are rejecting the notion of serving their community or allowing it to define what a man is, including accusing him of toxic masculinity. They're losing any sense of civic duty en masse. And if that doesn't alarm you, it should do. Look at this quote from the ever wonderful Paul Elam of A Voice for Men. All your life you're told by others what it means to be a real man, and you're told how worthless you are if you don't measure up. Just know this, anyone, man or woman, sending you this message is trying to shame you into their service. They're manipulating you to carry their load, to take on their hardship, even to bleed and die for their cause or their profit. Don't buy the lie. No one but you can define you as a human being or measure your worth. Never trust anyone who puts an adjective before the word man. At the beginning of this video, I mentioned the white feather movement, and some of you will have worked out where this is all heading. Whenever a woman invokes a real man shaming tactic, think of the white feather movement. Whenever you're called an incel, pathetic, a basement dweller, a loser, think of the white feather movement. Whenever someone calls you a small man, not a real man, tells you that your masculinity is fragile, think of the white feather movement. It's just the modern equivalent, nothing more, nothing less. And it seems to be happening more and more as women become increasingly threatened by MGTOW and its implications. That penny is beginning to drop. So how would a MGTOW have responded to the white feather movement? How would he have reacted to some suffragette trying to shame him for not enlisting? That's easy to answer. The same way he reacts to its modern equivalent, contemporary attempts to shame him into activities which run contrary to his well-being. Marriage and the risk of divorce and losing his home and everything he owns. Fatherhood and the risk of being denied access to his children and going back onto what is known in MGTOW circles as the plantation, working to provide for a family he never sees with no benefit whatsoever to himself. A MGTOW won't feel shame, he won't have a nervous breakdown, he won't commit suicide, and he certainly won't comply with whatever it is his would-be oppressor is demanding. A MGTOW will snort and say, "Stick your white feather up your arse, love, I don't give a shit what you think." And he will mean it. He will absolutely mean it, 100%. He will walk away and he won't give the matter so much as a second thought. This is why it's quite amusing to see women posting videos about MGTOW online now. Some are disparaging, others are sympathetic. All of them are irrelevant because MGTOW men don't care whether women approve or disapprove, precisely because they are MGTOW men. It isn't for the women to pass judgment and define how a man should think, or what sort of women he should find attractive, or what his goals in life should be. That's the whole point. Those days are over. I knew a very nice, kind but clueless lady who told me that men are cowards nowadays for not being willing to take the risk of getting married anymore. Bless. Wakey, wakey! The most terrifying thing men en masse can do to counter the feminist contagion is to do nothing. Sweet F.A. A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. Do you remember that one? Over the next 25 years, women will see with perfect clarity just how untrue that is. Our disdain, our total disregard for anything women desire, our wonderful, spectacular indifference, our simply doing nothing will be earth-shattering. So grab some popcorn, guys, swell our numbers, sit back and enjoy the show. Enjoy running civilization, Cupcake. We're out of here. Actually, the only reason we're sticking around at all is just to watch it all burn, really. So if you found that interesting, if you enjoyed it, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and consider becoming a sponsor. And I'll see you next time on MGTOW Minstrel. Bye.